Families can face all kinds of challenges, from conflicts to financial problems. Yet there are families that stay united through thick and thin. It's easy to see which ones are happier, isn't it? My name is Rachel, and I've always been called different. Since childhood, people have labeled me an oddball. I never fully understood why, but I knew that being different came with its challenges. The hardest part wasn't what others said about me. It was the way my own parents seemed to ignore me. This left me feeling alone and isolated for most of my life. You see, I've always been able to sense people's emotions. It's like I can feel what they're thinking without them saying a word. It's not something I can explain. It's as natural to me as breathing. But what seemed normal to me was incomprehensible to others. Once, when my dad brought a colleague home, I felt an unease I couldn't shake. I told my mom, "Be careful with him," but she brushed me off. Later, that same man tricked my dad into signing a risky contract. Thankfully, I had warned my father to hesitate, and he avoided a financial disaster. My intuition saved us, but instead of being grateful, my parents dismissed it as a fluke. Another time, while shopping with my mom, I felt a wave of dread coming from a man behind us. I grabbed her hand and pulled her to a side street. Moments later, we heard someone shout, "Thief!" The man had stolen a woman's purse, leaving her injured. If I hadn't acted, my mom could have been his target. But even then, my parents refused to acknowledge my ability. They started to distance themselves from me, whispering about how strange I was. I stopped sharing my feelings, knowing they wouldn't believe me. My younger sister, Julie, became the center of their attention. She was cheerful, charming, and everything I wasn't. As the years passed, my parents openly favored Julie. They would say things like, "Julie is such a lovely girl," while looking at me with disapproval. Julie noticed this and began to treat me poorly, mocking me whenever she could. "Your gloominess rubs off on me," she'd say. My parents rarely intervened, and if they did, it was half-hearted. By the time Julie was in 5th grade, she was scouted by a talent agency. She was thrilled, dreaming of fame and fortune. When she told us about it, I felt something was off. "You should be cautious," I warned. "This doesn't feel right." But Julie laughed it off, accusing me of being jealous. Even my parents dismissed my concerns. In the end, the agency turned out to be a scam. They took Julie's money, promising auditions that never came, and then vanished. Julie was devastated, but instead of blaming the scammers, she blamed me. "You jinxed it," she yelled. "This is all your fault." Around this time, a student teacher joined our school. He was charming and popular, but I sensed something sinister about him. Breaking my own rule to stay silent, I confided in a teacher I trusted. "Please believe me," I said. "Something's not right about him." She listened and agreed to keep an eye on him. A few days later, the man was caught trying to install a hidden camera in the girls' restroom. My warning had saved my classmates, but the incident made me even more isolated. People avoided me, whispering about how weird I was. Despite everything, I found a mentor in Hannah, someone who shared my ability. She taught me how to embrace my gift and use it for good. For the first time, I felt understood. With her guidance, I started to come out of my shell and live a more normal life. But my relationship with Julie continued to deteriorate. She couldn't stand my newfound confidence and lashed out even more. "Just because you got into college doesn't mean you're better than me," she sneered when I was accepted into my first-choice university. Julie's frustration only grew when she failed to get into her top-choice high school. She poured all her energy into studying and eventually excelled, getting into a prestigious university. She couldn't resist boasting about it. "My college is way better than yours," she'd say, expecting me to argue. But I'd just nod, knowing that any response would fuel her anger. After graduation, I decided to work as a freelance advisor, using my ability to help businesses and individuals. My mentor encouraged me, saying it was the perfect job for someone like me. My parents, however, didn't see it that way. "What kind of job is that?" they scoffed. "You'll never make a living working from home." But I persisted, and over time, my work flourished. I gained a reputation for turning struggling businesses around, earning the respect of many. Still, my parents gave Julie all the credit for the money I contributed to the household. Julie, meanwhile, landed a job at a foreign company and quickly climbed the ranks. She made sure to remind me of her success. "I'm earning 5 times more than you," she'd say, dismissing my accomplishments. Despite her high salary, she refused to contribute to the household, leaving me to handle most of the chores. Whenever I brought it up, she'd snap, "You're the unemployed one. You handle it." Then came the bombshell. Julie announced she was getting married. Her fiancé, Jack, seemed perfect, charming, successful, and from a wealthy family. But when I met him, I felt an unsettling darkness about him. "Julie, you should get to know him better before rushing into marriage," I cautioned. She exploded, accusing me of being jealous. Even my parents sided with her, eager for her to marry into wealth. The wedding day arrived, and everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. During the reception, Jack's brother, Larry, stood up and exposed the truth. "Jack's family isn't wealthy," he revealed. "Their company went bankrupt months ago, and Jack is unemployed." Chaos erupted as guests whispered and my sister's face turned pale. Jack's lies unraveled, and the wedding ended in disaster. In the aftermath, Julie's life fell apart. She was burdened with debts from the wedding and a canceled apartment lease. Her reputation at work took a hit, and she was eventually demoted. Meanwhile, I continued to thrive, helping companies and individuals find success. The contrast between our lives couldn't have been starker. Cutting ties with my family was the hardest decision I ever made, but it was necessary for my well-being. I moved out and started fresh, focusing on my career and the future. Along the way, I found love with Larry, who had been honest and supportive throughout the chaos. Together, we built a life filled with mutual respect and understanding. As my work gained recognition, I began receiving invitations to speak at seminars and conferences. Sharing my journey and how I'd used my abilities to help struggling businesses gave me a sense of purpose. It was surreal to be seen as an expert, someone people admired. This was a far cry from the girl who was once mocked for being different. Julie, on the other hand, struggled to rebuild her life. She'd lost her job and reputation, and her pride prevented her from asking for help. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. She was my sister, after all. But every time I tried to reach out, she'd lash out in anger. "Don't pity me," she'd snap, refusing any olive branch I extended. One day, I received an email from a major corporation. They wanted to hire me as a consultant to help with a critical merger. It was the biggest opportunity of my career. Nervously, I accepted and threw myself into the project. The stakes were high, and failure wasn't an option. But as I worked, I felt a renewed sense of confidence. This was where I belonged, using my unique abilities to make a real difference. The merger was a success, and the company's CEO personally thanked me. "Your insights were invaluable," he said. The success opened even more doors, and soon I was working with some of the biggest names in the industry. My mentor, Hannah, couldn't have been prouder. "You've come so far," she said. Her words reminded me of how much I owed to her guidance. Meanwhile, Julie's bitterness grew. She'd heard about my success through mutual acquaintances and couldn't hide her resentment. "You think you're better than me now?" she spat during a rare family gathering. I didn't respond, knowing it would only escalate the tension. Our parents, too, had changed. With Julie no longer able to support them, they'd turn to me for help. But their sudden interest in my life felt hollow. "We always knew you'd make something of yourself," my mom said one day, her tone dripping with insincerity. I'd spent years yearning for their approval, but now that I had it, it felt meaningless. Larry and I grew closer, and one evening, he proposed. His sincerity and kindness had been a constant source of strength for me. "I can't imagine my life without you," he said, slipping the ring onto my finger. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. We began planning our future together, envisioning a life filled with love and mutual respect. Julie's life, however, continued to spiral. She'd burned bridges with most of her friends and colleagues, leaving her isolated. Our parents' financial struggles deepened, and they began pressuring me for more support. But I'd learned to set boundaries. "I'll help where I can," I told them, "but I won't enable you." As I reflect on everything that has happened, I've come to understand the importance of resilience. Life hasn't been easy, but every challenge has shaped me into the person I am today. Embracing my differences, finding my purpose, and building a life with Larry has brought me a sense of peace I never thought possible. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time, I'm excited to see where it leads.